So let's talk about a little bit of last day, then we'll do 2 questions. So now, all these questions have lots of math operations going on it, so it can get confusing, right? So for our assignment and for our notes, I'm going to have BEDMAS written here and the rules for all the different kinds of calculations. This is what we do when we're adding. This is what we do when we're dividing. This is what we do when we're multiplying. So that will be something there to help you, right? But by next week, Wednesday, you need to have that stuff memorized so you know what to do in each one of these situations. There's 4 situations, or well, technically 3, right? So now, when you look at a question, don't get worried about the numbers. Look at the math operations. Spot all the math operations, then use BEDMAS to figure out what order you're going to do the calculations. So I like labeling A, B, C, and stuff like that. You don't have to do that, but this sort of tells you, okay, I'm going to worry about this first. I'm going to worry about this second, and worry about this third. And it gives you a little plan to work on. And the other thing was, hey, work vertically down the page. Make sure you line things up so you can not make mistakes just by having numbers in the wrong spot. All right, so we're going to try that. Okay, so let's go to the back page. Let's look over here. All right, so first things first. Brackets. Once again, there's lots of them. Yes, Gage? Yeah, we're going to do the ones in brackets first, but I talked about these round brackets last day. Yeah. If you look at these round brackets here, those are just normal. They're just there to tell you if a number is positive or negative. If you look inside of it, there's only one fraction, so there's no calculation. So this round bracket here is just here to tell you the fact that this is a negative number. This is a negative number, and this is a negative number. That's the whole point. There's no calculations there. The only calculation bracket we have in this example is this square bracket. And yes, Gage, we do the brackets first. So the first thing we have to do is this operation, which is going to be our A. And what other operations do you see? Is there any other operations? Add, subtract, multiply, divide. That's what I mean when I say the word operations. Just the divide sign right here, right? So that's the second thing we're going to do. First thing, second thing. Now, with lots of negative signs, we want to combine if possible, right? So looking at A here, I see a negative sign over here, and I see a negative sign over here. Is there any simplifying we can do with those negative signs? Is there any combining we can do? Yeah, what do you see, Gage?
You can cross them out.
You can't cross these 2 out, right? You could do that if it's multiplying or if it's dividing. So remember, with adding, subtracting, you can only cross them out if they're on the same fraction or they're touching each other, right? For example, these are 2 different ones. They can't cancel each other out. But we have a plus and a minus right next to each other here. So you can combine these 2 together to be a minus. So we can get rid of this one and this one, these 2 signs, and make a single minus sign. Okay? All right. So we go, okay. We simplified as much as we could with the signs. We go over here. We go, okay, what is my rule for adding? Before we can add the numbers together or subtract the numbers together, we need to have a common denominator, right? So we go 5 and 4. We can use a multiplication chart to help us, but what is our common denominator for 5 and 4? Yeah, 20, right? So we're going to make both the bottoms into 20. So the first one, you're going to have to multiply by 4. Remember, top and bottom. That gives us our 20. The second one, we have to multiply by 5 to get us to 20. So we write out our new fractions right underneath this. We're going to work vertically, not horizontally. So the first one, we end up with 8 over 20. And instead of the negative sign up front, I'll move it up to the 8. You're less likely to do a calculation error. In the second one, we end up with 1 times 5 is 5, 4 times 5 is 20. And that's what we have. Okay? So now, remember, we don't simplify right at the beginning. We don't start doing this cross stuff. We subtract these numbers. We get we get our answer. Right? So remember, the denominator stays the same. In the calculation, yes, what do we get?
13.
Sorry, what number?
Isn't that 13?
13? Yes. negative 8 minus 5 is 13, but negative 13. We need the negative sign on there, right? So we have negative 13. All right, good. Now, you can keep this bracket here if you want or not have it. It's up to you. Sometimes students like having the bracket there, so that bracket's there. So once you get an operation down to a single number or a fraction here, then you move on to the next letter. Okay, this is down to one thing. Then we move on to the next one. Okay, now we need to do B. So we're going to drop B down. So we draw a little arrow. We're going to drop this down and then go like this. Make sure it's at the same height. And negative 3 over 7 divide by what our answer was. Okay? So we go, okay. These are the two numbers we're going to combine. Remember the other thing I talked about the other day? Hey, when you combine two fractions, try to write the answer right in the middle so you can sort of follow it. So we go, okay, we want to divide. We look up the rules for dividing. It was keep, flip, flip. First fraction stays the same. Change the dividing to a times. Change that fraction around. So the first fraction stays the same. Negative 3 over 7. And this stuff is what's flipping. Change that to a times. Flip this, 20 over 13. But keep the negative on the top. Okay? Now, so before we do our calculation stuff, we look at the signs. You go, can the signs in this one be combined? Yeah. So in multiplying, you can combine the signs from two different fractions. Right? So this one, two negatives make a positive. So that ends up being a positive fraction. Right? So I'm just going to leave that number line there. We don't have to worry about the signs anymore. And we go, okay, is there any simplifying that we can do in this one? Any tops and bottoms we can combine to make it smaller? Do you see any? Right? There isn't anything. Right? That's just no simplifying. So all we can do is multiply. Top times top. 3 times 20 is our 60. And 7 times 13 would be 91. Good, thank you. 91. And that is our final answer. Okay? So just to remind you of all the different rules, right? Remember, you can put a little box on it to help highlight where the answer is. That's sort of what we're going to go through. Okay? Okay, let's do one more. The rest of the class is working on your assignment. So we're going to go over here. All right. So once again, all of these round brackets are just for signs. Yes, Gage?
The square brackets.
Okay, so before we say what we do first, right, let's go through, find all the operations. So inside the square brackets, how many operations do you see?
3.
Sorry?
3.
Inside the square brackets? There is only 2. There's one here, and there's one right here. What's the purple operation? Multiply. So I'll put a little dot there. Okay? And let's go outside of this bracket. So, first of all, inside the brackets here. No, let's just go outside. Outside the bracket here, what operations do you see outside the brackets? Yes, Gage? There's this negative right here. Let's do this in green. Okay? Do you see any other operations? Lumio? Where? Yeah. Between the 1/2 and the other one. So what color have I used? I haven't used blue yet. Right here. Between two sets of numbers, there's always an operation. So there's a number touching a bracket means times. So another time. So I'm going to put a little dot right there. Or maybe not a dot this time. I'll put an X there. Okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 operations. Gage, which one are we doing first? The division one, inside the brackets. Then technically, we move on to the multiplying. Right? Because we go left to right. But remember, multiplying and division are tied. Since they're in the same brackets, we can actually do these both all at once. Right? So we can do the whole crossing from one bracket to the other. So let's call this A and A, because we're going to do both of them at the same time. Okay. Then where do we go? We have blue times and a green minus left to label the order of. Which one do we do next? Yeah, the blue times. So this one's going to be the third thing we do. That means adding and subtracting is always the last thing we do. All right, so C. So that's the order we're going to do. A, B, C. All right. So we start off with inside the bracket. And the rule is, for division, the first fraction stays the same. If we're going to flip the division, that belongs to the fraction just after it. So that goes to a times. That means this fraction goes up, and that number goes down. Right? Those ones flip. And you're better off to keep the negative on the top. Excuse me. Okay, then we have this times here, and that next fraction, the 6/2, does that one flip? No, because it's the times. That one stays the same. So this times stays the same, and that 6/2 stays the same. Because there's no change. Okay, so now there's lots of negatives here. We want to combine them. Is our final answer positive or negative for this calculation? Positive, because we have 4 of these things. They're all going to cancel each other out. So we're just going to go, I'm just going to draw a fraction line. I'm going to cross all these off so I don't have to worry them about them. All right? Okay. So now we look for our top bottom pairs to make this smaller. Do you see any sets of numbers that can go smaller? Gage, what do you see?
3 and 9.
3 and 9 can be both divided by 3, right? So cross this off. Cross this off, we can divide those by 3. So it fits in 3 times here, fits in once there.
And then 3 and the 6, right?
The 3 and the 6 as well. We go cross off the 3, cross off the 6, divide those by 3.
And then 4 and
So wait, fits in twice in a 1. And what else?
4 and 32.
The 4 into the 32, right? So we divide both of those by 4. Cross off, 4 fits into 4 once, and 4 fits into 32 8 times.
And 2.
And what?
And then the 2.
We can do the 2 and an 8. I'm not going to say no, but look, we have a 2 and a 2, right? Either way. So, but you said 2 and an 8, so we'll do the 2 and the 8. So let's do blue on that one. So divide this 2 and this 2, 8. So fits in once here, fits in 4 times there. All right? And at the bottom, all we have is a bunch of 1s. So that's as small as we can get. So 1 times 1 times 1 on the bottom is just 1. On the top, we have 1 times 4 times 2. So 1 times 4 is 2, times 2 is 8. There we go. 8. Okay. So we brought the A's down to a single fraction. Now we move on to the next thing. Okay, now it's time for B. Right? So we're going to bring B down. So when I bring this B down, I have a half here. Do I bring the orange minus sign with it? No, sorry, green minus sign with it. No, that's a subtraction. It belongs over here. So the half comes down, but we do bring down that times. All right? There we go. All right? So now we go, okay, is there any way to make this any smaller? That's the rule for simplifying. Yeah, the even numbers, just divide by 2, right? Cross off, fits in once, fits in 4 times. And that's it. Multiply the tops together, multiply the bottoms together. So right underneath the times, I'm going to write my answer, 4/1. That was an easier step, right? So B has come down to a single fraction. Now we move on to C. There you go. Okay, I'm going to move C down. I'm going to bring this arrow all the way down here. Okay, now this one's turn. So I have a minus sign, I'm going to bring down, and that's 2 over negative 3. And I'll just move the negative to the top. Okay? Like this. All right. So now, we always look at negatives. Can these negatives be combined together? No. Right? We're subtracting here. The rules are they have to be touching or on the same fraction. So these two negatives can't be combined. So this is a subtraction question. Right? We look at, okay, before we subtract, we need to make the bottoms the same. So you have a 3 and a 1. What's our common denominator? 3, right? So the first fraction can stay the same. We go a little times 1 here. Yeah, you don't have to show the times 1. And a times 3 here. So we end up with a negative 2 over 3 minus 12 over 3. Right? It's saying, hey, what's the biggest difference between grade 8 and grade 9 is these negative signs. That's what probably can cause you the most amount of grief. So if your answers don't match what I have on the answer key, go back and check your negatives or call me over. That's where most likely you're going to make the mistakes. Okay, so now the bottoms stay the same. We combine the tops together. We have negative 2 minus 12. What number do we get? Negative 14. And we go, can we make this any smaller? Right? The only way you can make it smaller if 3 fits into 14 and 3 doesn't fit into 14. So that's as small as it gets. That's our final answer. Okay? That's it. All right? A lot of work. It's going to be slow going. All right? So when we are working on our assignment,